The reason you're stuck isn't lack of talent. It's lack of discipline over emotion. And everyone's lying to you about it. They tell you to feel your feelings, to honor your emotions, to express yourself. And while you're doing that, disciplined people are taking everything you want. Your opportunities, your relationships, your future. Because here's what nobody says. Uncontrolled emotion makes you predictable. Discipline makes you dangerous. You don't want to hear that. You've been trained to think emotions are sacred, that suppressing them is toxic, that you need to process everything you feel. But that's exactly why you're stuck. You're processing, they're executing, you're feeling, they're winning. And the gap gets wider every single day. Let me show you what's really happening. Every time you act from emotion, you lose. Every time you react instead of respond, you hand over control. Every single decision you make while angry, sad, anxious, or triggered, wrong. Not sometimes wrong, always wrong. Because emotion clouds judgment, and clouded judgment destroys lives. The Stoics knew this 2,000 years ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events, not your emotions, your mind, because your mind can override emotion, but only if you train it, only if you build discipline stronger than your feelings." And most people never do that. They spend their entire lives as slaves to whatever they're feeling in the moment. Here's the test. Think about the last time you were emotional, angry, hurt, scared. What did you do? You probably said something you regret, made a decision you can't take back, burned a bridge you needed. And afterward, when the emotion passed, you saw it clearly. You knew it was a mistake. But it was too late. That's what emotion does. It convinces you that temporary feelings are a permanent truth. But discipline? Discipline sees through it. Discipline waits, observes, chooses the response that serves your future, not your feelings. And that's the skill that separates winners from everyone else. Not talent, not luck. The ability to do what's right when you feel like doing what's easy. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. The reason most people avoid discipline isn't because it's hard. It's because it reveals the truth. You're not a victim of circumstances. You're a victim of your own lack of control. And that's terrifying to admit. Because if you're in control, you can't blame anyone else for where you are. So instead, people romanticize emotion. They call it authenticity. They celebrate vulnerability. They reward people for breaking down in public and call it brave. But it's not brave. It's unstable. And deep down, you know it. Because the people you actually respect, they don't fall apart. They don't let emotion dictate their actions. They stay calm when everyone else loses it. And that calm, that's discipline. Let's talk about what discipline actually looks like. Because most people think it's about willpower, about toughing it out or being strong. But that's not it. Discipline is a system, a decision made in advance so emotion doesn't get a vote. You don't wait until you're angry to decide how you'll respond to disrespect. You decide now, before it happens. So when it does happen, you're not reacting from emotion. You're executing a plan. That's discipline. And it's why disciplined people look effortless. They're not fighting emotion in the moment. They already won the fight weeks ago. Here's what they don't tell you. Every person you admire, every single one, chose discipline over emotion at the exact moment it mattered most. Not once, thousands of times. When they wanted to quit, they didn't. When they wanted to lash out, they stayed silent. When they wanted to give up, They kept going. And that's what built them, not their talent, their discipline. But you? You're still choosing emotion. You're still reacting. You're still letting how you feel determine what you do. And that's why you're not where you want to be. Not because you're not capable, because you're not disciplined. And everyone's too scared to tell you that because they don't want to hurt your feelings. But your feelings are exactly the problem. Think about the last week. How many times did emotion cost you? You snapped at someone and damaged a relationship. You procrastinated because you didn't feel like it and missed a deadline. You made an impulsive decision because you were hurt and now you're paying for it. Every single one of those moments? Discipline would have saved you. But you chose emotion instead. And here's the brutal part. Emotion feels good in the moment. It feels justified, righteous, like you're standing up for yourself. But look at the results. Where did it get you? What did you actually gain by acting from anger? From fear? From hurt? Nothing. You lost time, energy, respect. And you'll do it again tomorrow unless you build discipline strong enough to override it. Epictetus said it perfectly. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Translation: people will judge you for staying calm, for not reacting, for choosing discipline when they're choosing drama. Let them. Because while they're judging you, they're also losing. And you're winning. Slowly, quietly, inevitably. Now here's what nobody wants to admit. Discipline isn't natural. It's built. Through repetition. Through choosing the hard thing over and over until it becomes automatic. And most people quit before they get there. They try discipline for a week, don't see results, and go back to emotion. Because emotion is easy, discipline is hard. And hard things separate the few from the many. So how do you actually build this? How do you choose discipline when every part of you is screaming to react? First, you accept that emotion is information, not instruction. It tells you something is happening. It doesn't tell you what to do. Anger tells you a boundary was crossed. It doesn't tell you to burn the relationship. Fear tells you there's risk. It doesn't tell you to quit. Emotion is a signal, not a command. And the moment you understand that difference, you take back control. Second, you create space between feeling and action. This is the most important skill you'll ever build. When emotion hits, you pause. You breathe. You observe it instead of becoming it. And in that space, that gap between stimulus and response, you make a choice. Do I act from emotion and regret it later? Or do I act from discipline and thank myself tomorrow? That gap is where discipline lives. But most people never create it. They go straight from feeling to action. No pause, no thought, just reaction. And that's why their lives are chaos. Because they're on autopilot. And autopilot is controlled by emotion, not wisdom. Third, you practice negative visualization. Every day, you imagine the worst thing that could happen. Not to be pessimistic, to be prepared. So when it actually happens, you're not surprised. You're not emotional. You already decided how you'll handle it. And you execute that plan. No drama, no breakdown, just discipline. The Stoics did this daily. They imagined losing everything. Betrayal, death, failure. And they decided in advance, if this happens, here's who I'll be. So when it happened, they didn't collapse. They responded with discipline, with control, with power. And that's what made them unshakable. Here's what happens when you master this. You stop being a victim of your emotions. You stop giving away your power to circumstances. You You stop letting other people control you by controlling your feelings. Because they can't. You've built discipline stronger than any emotion they could trigger. And that's when you become dangerous. Not dangerous in a violent way. Dangerous in nothing you do can break me way. Dangerous in a I control my response regardless of what you do way. That's real power. Not forcing outcomes. Controlling yourself. But here's the final truth. Most people will never build this. They'll keep choosing emotion, keep reacting, keep wondering why their life isn't working. And they'll blame everything except the real problem. They never built discipline. They never chose control over comfort. They never did the work. You can be different. You can choose discipline over emotion. Not sometimes. Every time. Not when it's easy, especially when it's hard. And if you do that, if you commit to building discipline stronger than your feelings, you won't just change your life. You'll dominate it. Because here's what they're avoiding, the truth they don't want you to know. Emotion without discipline is chaos disguised as authenticity. And discipline over emotion is strength disguised as coldness. The world rewards the second one. It always has. It always will. The only question is which one you're going to choose. Stop feeling your way through life. Start disciplining your way through it. And watch what happens when you do.